So, grab a cup of coffee, grab your favorite beverage, maybe some hot chocolate, cup of coffee. Pretend there's a little bit of a fire going on. Maybe you're in bed or you're on the couch with a comfy blanket, and get ready for a good story. Welcome to the D. Louise book series. My name, Kristina, and this is where we read books and talk about books. No special effects going on here. No theme music or anything like that. And spoilers, lots of spoilers. Spoilers. We've taken some criticism lately. So, gotta enjoy the book. I can't do this without enjoying the book and sharing the book with you. So, are you ready for a good story? See if I don't even know if my papers are in order. So, we're gonna start with Wild Jasmine. But technically, the story starts here. This heart of mine. Velvet learns that she was betrothed at a very, very young age to the Earl of Brockern, and she revolts. Now, remember the Queen Elizabeth Tudor sent her folks on an errand, and they've been gone for a couple of years. So he comes, and she just revolts. Revolts something terrible. But they work through that stuff, and they ended up eventually do get married. However, shortly after they're married, he ends up in a duel, and it is reported to her mistakenly that he was killed in the duel. So, not even waiting to see the body or anything, she vaults and she leaves. She wants to go get her parents. So she goes off, and there's a long story there, but she gets kidnapped. And then she has a very romantic, there's a whole trail of stuff that goes on. She's believing her husband is deceased, so she is a widow. She falls in love with Akbar, and they have a child, and very loving relationship. And all of a sudden, the O'Malley's show up and go, hey, he ain't dead. So Akbar, being the really good guy he is, he goes, all right, she can go, but the kid stays. And at the end of where is it? At the end of Love Lost Found, it's Christmas. On Christmas Day, 1605, there was an enormous gathering in the family chapel of Queen's Malvern, the home of Lord and Lady de Marsco, the Earl and Countess of Lundy. On this day, Lord and Lady Burke's second child and first son was to be christened. Attending the gathering were the proud father's three older brothers, Hugh and O'Flaherty, the master of Balhennessy, who had traveled from Ireland with his wife across a winter sea to attend the event. Captain Murray O'Flaherty and Robert Small Southwood, the Earl of Plymouth, two of Lord Burke's three sisters, along with their respective maids, were there. Lady Willow Edwards, the Countess of Alshire, and Deirdre Blakely, Lady Blackthorn. There was also a huge variety of assorted nieces and nephews. Lord Burke's youngest sister, Velvet, the Countess of Brockern, was still in Scotland. She and her husband had family would be coming south in the spring to join King James's court. And there's a bunch of stuff going on. And then um, uh, the Great Hall at Queen's Malvern was decorated for the 12 days of Christmas with pine, laurel, holly, and bay leaves. Great beeswax candles burned everywhere, and in the main fireplace of the hall were gigantic Yule logs. At the high board and at the tables just below, Skye and Adam, Con and Aidan, and all of their children watched contentedly as their descendants scampered about happily about the hall. Well, little girl, Adam D. Moscow said affectionately, 45 grandchildren, so we have 5 to go, eh? She says 46. I have not forgotten, he replied, but our little princess is the one that we may never talk about. We are going to have to talk about her sooner than later, my lord, she informed her husband. I received a message this very day from India. A servant of the emperor himself brought it. Even now the messenger warms himself in our kitchen. Adam looked puzzled. The birthday pearl? It's that time of year again, is it not, my love? Has the birthday pearl arrived? She's 15, is she not? Aye, she said. She's 15 and she will be in London at the end of January, Adam. What? Lord Damasco said. The granddaughter we have never been able to acknowledge, this child whose existence has been a secret from our whole family. The little princess of ours be in London by the end of next month. Her father has sent her to live with us. She is to remain in England. And he's like, why? And she's like, you'll read the letter. So, then we back up a little bit in Wild Jasmine. Akbar is mourning the loss of Velvet. So he's mourning her loss, but he's cherishing his little daughter. And so Yasmin grows up with her father and her aunt. I'm killing the pronunciations here, but they're all Indian names. Rajaya. Call her Rug for short, I guess. But she raises Jasmine, and they do a really good job of teaching, informing Jasmine of her English mother. They keep the memory alive. They have a little picture, one of those cameo things, and they tell her of her mother all the time. So she's aware that these people there is not her mother, but that this is her father, and that her parents had a great love, and they spoil her rotten. And then the grandmother gives a whole bunch of gifts and stuff like that. We go through all that. However, her half brother Salim has an unhealthy attraction for his sister. And when they find out about it, they decide that she must wed. And she's only 13 or 14. So they have to marry her. So she insists that the marriage be in the Indian faith and in the Christian faith. So they marry her to this guy, and she takes her servants with her that have been serving her forever, Tormali and Rohan, and they serve her forever. And so she goes to wed this other guy, and her brother has a fit and a half, but there's nothing he can do about it. Or is there? It's a lot of interesting story, and we're going to stick with the second part of this to keep this under an hour or so, and I hope you're still with me. My analytics say you've already said sayonara, but I hope you're still with me enjoying this book. I usually read pages and pages and pages. I'm trying to keep that down a little bit. But the brother, Salim, decides that he does not want her to be married. He wants her for himself. He's going to be ruler and he can do whatever he wants. Oh gee, we ever heard that before? All right, excuse me. So he arranges for her husband to be killed. So then, uh, uh, trying to find the page here. So she goes back to her father's for his birthday. And her father has this all planned. Rujia Begum and I have discussed it. Father, Jasmine must leave India. Oh, wait a minute, let me back up. Now, we all know that Skye O'Malley, and I guess I should really back up here even a little bit more. But Skye O'Malley, she's our heroine, and she's the beginning of this whole series. And she has a very large family, and we won't go into all of them, but there is one branch of her brother Michael, who is the O'Malley. She started out as the O'Malley, but she appointed him the O'Malley when she got into her 60s. By the end of the book, Skye is pushing 70. And I do believe she passes in the next one, and it's going to be very teary, very, very teary. There's a couple of moments in here that are really teary, too. So, they know something that no one else knows, that this priest that's been hanging around with Jasmine her whole life has been sending little messages back to the family for years so they know how she's progressing, because he is an O'Malley, a relation. So let's see. The priest came and Akbar told him of all the events that had transpired this day, concluding, I know that you know the real reason we named her Jasmine off so quickly. Father, now, however, all our plans to keep her safe from Salim, and Salim safe from his own wicked desires, have gone astray. What are we to do then, gracious Lord? The priest asked. Wajia Begum and I have discussed it, Father, and Jasmine must leave India. There is no other way. She must go to England to Kanja's family. That was Velvet's Indian name, Kandra. CANDRA. I believe it's family. I could be wrong. But there is no way. She must go to England to Kanja's family. I will, of course, want you to escort her. Will the church allow you to leave your post here, I wonder? My post is with the princess, gracious Lord. The priest answered, my instructions, which came from my bishop, were to remain with her always. If she goes to England, then I must of necessity follow her. Is the church so interested in the welfare of a single soul that it would assign a priest to do its keeping? Akbar mused. Cullen Butler laughed softly. Has it ever occurred to you, gracious Lord, that perhaps the church was not quite as involved with my coming as you esteemed? That perhaps there were other factors involved in being assigned to Princess household? I do not understand you, the Mughal said. I myself requested that the Jesuits send me a priest for Yasmin's household. Indeed you did, gracious Lord. In due time I was sent to you a priest, but not a member of the order of Jesuits. I was very surprised, although at the same time most grateful, that you never questioned the church decision. The Jesuits are a powerful order and very jealous of their foothold in India. I have had to walk carefully and defer to them at very turn, lest they grow too curious as to why I, and not one of their own, was sent to your daughter's household. It was not an easy task that I was set when I was set forth to India. The Mughal stared at the pleasant-faced priest as important of his words penetrated his brain. Who are you? He finally asked, and how did you come to be here? I was sent at your request, which was forwarded by the Jesuits to Paris. Then Beric O'Dowd, a priest in the Jesuit order, came into the picture. He'd heard of your desire and communicated with his childhood friend and Irish bishop, who communicated with his sister. The result was that I, and not a Jesuit, was sent to India. You have met his Irish bishop yourself. but once he is Michael O'Malley. His sister is Jasmine, Benjamin's other grandmother, Lady DeMarsco. I, gracious Lord, am their nephew, the youngest son of Sine O'Malley Butler. When father or dad told me my uncle Michael that a priest was required for the princess's household, Lady Damasco insisted that I be sent. In that way my aunt was always able to have first-hand accounts of her grandchild. Although she understood your reasons for not allowing the princess to come to England with her mother, she grieved for the grandchild lost to her. My aunt is a woman of very strong values, gracious Lord, and for her family is everything. If you knew of Yasmin's progress through communication with you, Father Cullen, then why was she always pestering me with her letters? It was my aunt's way of personally letting you know that she cared what happened to her granddaughter, the priest answered. Akbar sighed. I think I should be angry that Lady Damasco's reach is so long. She must be a very powerful woman. Why did you not tell me until now, Father Cullen, that you are related by blood to my daughter? Perhaps you feared that I would send you away. There was always that possibility, gracious Lord. I was not sent here to spy, but rather to watch over my young relative. If you knew my aunt, you would understand, but I would not have you gain an incorrect picture of her. She is wealthy through her own efforts, proud, stubborn, and determined. She is the strongest woman I have ever known and possibly the most noble. Will she really welcome my daughter into her family? Akbar asked Father Cullen. And what of Yasmin's mother, Kandra? I cannot remember her other name. She has always been Kandra in my heart and mind, the Emperor said. The princess's mother is called Velvet, and she is my cousin. I do not really know her except by reputation. I will take the princess to her grandmother, my aunt in England. Velvet lives far to the north of her mother in another country called Scotland. Although now Scotland has inherited England's throne, the two lands will certainly be joined, I am certain. Has she other children, my daughter's mother? He asked. She has borne her husband 5 sons, Cullen Butler said. 5 sons, Akbar marveled. What are their ages, father? The eldest is 12, I believe, and the youngest 5. The priest told the Mughal there was also a stepdaughter from another alliance Velvet's husband had. The girl is just a little older than the princess and will surely be a good sister to her. Lady DeMarsco will, I think, want to keep the princess with her, however, gracious Lord. As a beautiful and wealthy young widow, Jasmine will have a better opportunity to contract a fine marriage from her grandmother's house than she would if she went to her mother's in Scotland. There is no court in Scotland any longer. Akbar said, yes, I want my Jasmine to remarry and be happy, father. The love of a good man will help her to find contentment in her new life, children too. I shall never see the grandchildren my daughter gives me. I shall never be able to dwaddle them upon my knee or take them tiger hunting in the howdah as I did Jasmine when she was just a small baby. How Kandra scolded me over it. Father Cullen, I wonder if she ever forgave me for refusing to allow Jasmine to go with her. Now I must send our daughter to her for protection. I can only pray that she will love and welcome her as I would were our positions reversed. My daughter will not arrive in England a pauper, Akbar said. Your aunt's ships will put into Cambay one shilly in midsummer. Jasmine will travel to England on one, and fortune will accompany her. There will be gold, jewels, spices, and silk. She will live out her days like the queen she was born to be. So they set it out, and she goes to England, and this is 1607, and oh, Adam, Skye continued. Do you know what a shock it was to me when Aldi arrived at Queen's Malvern on Christmas Day, and the servants? I thought their eyes would pop out of their heads when they saw him in that wonderful fur-lined robe, with a turban upon his head. I'm amazed they were able to keep him a secret from the family. She giggled a sound he found charming in a woman of her years. And the family still thinks us mad for our little outburst in the great hall after baby Adam's christening. Willow in particular thinks us quite doty, with all our talk of a 46th grandchild. and all our children and daughters-in-law were hotly denying that any of them were with child. We had the hall in quite an uproar, she laughed aloud with memory, particularly as you would not explain yourself to Willow despite her persistence. How your eldest daughter dislikes being kept out of anything. Well, she'll know soon enough, and I for one want to personally be here to see her face when she meets Jasmine. He chuckled. Our dear prim and proper Willow is in quite for a shock. And so she arrives. The O'Malley small trading fleet, 15 vessels strong, slowly made its way up the Thames River toward the London Pool, where they would anchor. Jasmine DeMarco and her 2 women servants stood in the large bow window in the master's cabin watching the landscape pass by. There was a knock upon the cabin door, and Rohan ran to open it, admitting Cullen Butler. He was dressed as they had never seen him before, in black wool pantaloons and a velvet doublet with the most modest amount of gold embroidery. There was a small ruff around his neck, and his leather boots came to his knees. Seeing their look of surprise, he explained, priests of the Holy Mother Church are not warmly welcomed in England. It is best that I remain discreet with my regard to my calling. And shall I call you Cousin Cullen? Aye, 'twould be best, and the lasses will call me Master Butler. Is my grandmother a devout woman? Jasmine asked him. In her own way, I suppose, he said glumly. In other words, just like me, Jasmine teased. Cullen Butler thought a moment and then laughed. Aye, I think you're probably correct, cousin. My Aunt Skye has supreme faith in God and her own ability to handle anything that is presented to her. She once told me that God never gave us anything to do that he did not truly believe we could handle. I don't know about that. There was another knock upon the door, and Rohan admitted Captain Small. We will be anchoring in another minute or 2. The large barge from Greenwood House is already waiting for you, my lady. So they get to the priest jumped forward and hurried toward the lady. Aunt Skye, he said, catching her hand up as he reached and kissing her. Why is it you never age, madam? I shall return to Ireland to find my own mother, your sister, a white-haired little old lady. A peal of rich laughter rang out at the loving flattery. If I were going to age, Cullen Butler, Skye said, I should have done so years ago with all my adventures, but I have not. For what seemed a very long moment, the 2 women surveyed each other. Skye's curly blue eyes hungrily scanning the slender girl for something familiar, something of velvet, but not really finding it. Jasmine absolutely astounded that this elegant young lady was her grandmother. Miriam Akim seemed ancient by comparison. Did Chandra look like her? You are so beautiful, the girl finally said, softly breaking the silence. So are you, Skye told her granddaughter, a half smile touching her mouth, yet biting her lower lip to keep from crying. Am I like Chandra? My mother, I mean, Jasmine corrected. I am trying to think of her as my mother. No, yes, perhaps a little, Skye said. Your eyes have the same shape as velvet, but they are much different. Look to them, and the color. They are like a Persian turquoise. As for that charming little mole between your upper lip and your left nostril, I do not recognize it at all. I have left Yasmin Kama begging behind in India, grandmother, Yasmin told her. With your permission, I shall prefer to be known as Jasmine DeMarco. Tears threatened to totally overwhelm Lady DeMarco for a moment, and then she said, So you shall be my darling girl. Welcome to England, Jasmine DeMarco. Then, unable to restrain herself any longer, Skye hugged the girl hard, kissing her soft. Let's go in. You and your ladies must be freezing in this river wind. Your grandfather is waiting for you in the house. I would not let him come out with me because I wanted to see you first. Adam DeMarco had watched the woman from the vantage of the library windows. Even with less than perfect vision, he could see that the girl was extraordinarily lovely. This was his firstborn grandchild. He wondered what his daughter Velvet was going to say about this development. He had wanted to write her immediately after the arrival of Aldi, but Skye would not let him. He's always got to interrupt. Always. You gotta check out my New Year's Eve video to see her identity. And Adam is 75 years old, and Skye is 72 by the end of the book. Like I said, the whole series spans Skye's entire life. So they get her all new clothing for England, and then she gets some very sad news. We must go home, Skye said. Your mother and her brood will be at Queen's Malvern in 2 weeks. I shall hold a family party. Then she looked at her granddaughter, who had suddenly grown paler as she read the message that had been addressed to her. What is it, darling child? My father is dead, Jasmine said. She held up a strand of magnificent black pearls. Alan has sent us the news via a late departing merchant vessel. Silent tears began to slip down her face. My father arranged this sign with me so that I would be certain the messenger did not lie. Skye enfolded the girl in a loving embrace. Death, she said, is always a shock, even when it is expected. We don't quite expect it. I will always remember when my own father died. I came to his bedside, and he entrusted the well-being of the family into my hands. Much to the shock of my sisters, my brothers-in-law, only my stepmother Annie supported me. She caressed Jasmine's hair. Does Alan say when the emperor died, my darling? He died on October 15, 1605. In the evening, it was his 63rd birthday. Mama Begun and Jody Bai were with him, Jasmine said. Alan is quoting the official statement. Then she sobbed her grief for Akbar upon the older woman's breast. So, and Cullen returns to his homeland, and they head to Queen's Malvern. And then we have, if you've known, when Skye returns from Algiers, during her travels through there, she adopts Daisy and her kids, rescues them. So Daisy has been her tiring woman, or her lady's maid, or whatever you want to call her, this whole series. So we get to back to Queen's Malvern, because Daisy doesn't know yet. No one knows yet. The front door to the house opened, and footmen came out to greet the travelers. They were accompanied by a gape-toothed woman who called Mistress Skye, and it's high time you got home. I was beginning to think it was the old days all over again, and you'd gone off without me. And I hope you have followed me through all of these, and all of Skye's adventures here. This is an awesome series. I always say, if you think Claire Beecham Randall Fraser had it hard, you haven't seen these people. You haven't been through Skye O'Malley's life. Daisy, I'd never go off without you, Skye laughed, and drawing her horse to a stop, dismounted slowly. I am certainly not as agile as I once was, she complained ruefully. Well, my lady, you must come along, the serving woman said, and I'll have a nice hot tub prepared for you this minute. Then Daisy's sharp eyes saw Jasmine, who was next to her grandfather. And who is this? She demanded, peering closely at the girl, a puzzled look coming into her eyes. She seems familiar. Do I know this last, Mr. Skye? Nay, Daisy, Skye told her tiring woman of many years. She slipped her through Daisy's arm, and together they went into the house. Come into the library, old friend, and we shall tell you who she is. Once the door to the room was closed, Skye motioned her servant to a chair and sat down opposite her. She drew Adam to her side while Jasmine settled herself onto a stool by her grandmother's knee. The girl looked particularly lovely in a midnight blue velvet riding skirt with an elegantly tailored matching silk jacket with silk pearls. This is Velvet's firstborn, Daisy. Though you have been discreet over the years, I know Pansy told you, Skye said simply, and then to Jasmine, Daisy's daughter Pansy is your mother's tiring woman. She was with her in India too, my darling. God Almighty, Daisy gasped. Then that's what the heathen Aldi was about with his arrival on Christmas Day, and all of us wondering and never knowing. She peered again at Jasmine. No wonder you look familiar to me, child. You both your grandmother and your mother in you, but more of your grandmother, I'm thinking. I've been with her since before Mistress Willa was born, and 'tis going on 50 years. I can remember when my lady was as fresh and ripe as you are now, child. Now why did the daughter of mine not get word to me about this? Probably too busy with her life in Brockharn Castle and all of Dougal Geddy's rambunctious sons. 7 of them she has. And now that she's got her girl, there will be no more babies for my pansy. Blossom is the last of them, you can be certain. Velvet does not know, Skye said. What? Daisy looked astounded. You have had this child for over 2 months, and your mother doesn't know she's here? Shame on you, my lady. Velvet will be here for her birthday on May 1st and remain for her English summer, Daisy. Jasmine is going to be my gift to her. She will be so surprised. I've sent invitations to Robin and Angel down in Devon, and to Morrow and Joan as well. They are to leave the children, however. 'Twould be too much for the children to absorb. Let my sons and daughters come to terms with this first. Willow and James have been invited. Now that I'm home, Deidre and John as well, and Patrick and Valentina shall be sent for. So she has all the kids come to Queen's Malvern, and she gets in a little bit of trouble. Skye's children had all arrived at Queen's Malvern but for Ewan O'Flaherty and his family, who lived in Ireland. Patrick and Valentina had ridden over from Parack Royal, and with Valentina's parents, Con and Aidan, Lord and Lady Bliss. Deidre Blackthorne had come in her coach from Blackthorne Hall with her husband John. She was quick to reassure Velvet that Nettie, Robert, and Henry were safe, well fed, and happily into naughtiness with the Blackthorne cousins. Thalia and Penelope are delighted to have them and are worse than the boys, Deidre said. Murray O'Flaherty and his Joan were up from Devon as Robin the Earl of Southwood and his wife Angel, and of course Willow the Countess of Alchester and her devoted husband James Edward. I cannot imagine what is so special about Velvet's 33rd birthday that we all had to be here, Willow said to her siblings. After Adam Burke's christening last Christmas, I was certain that Mama would never have us all again, but she absolutely insisted we come. Then she smiled mischievously. Of course we were told to have our numerous offspring at home. Do you know how I am to be a grandmother? Cicely's first is due around All Saints' Day. The hall had been decorated beautifully, flowering with branches of hawthorn, fragrant pine. Skye was an excellent hostess and had always enjoyed entertaining. Tonight the festive meal consisted of fine salmon that had been brought by the Gordons of Brockharn from Scotland. The creatures had been caught in nets and then transported in barrels of icy spring water to England, where they were met their end in the kitchens of Queen's Malvern. They were served upon beds of fresh, sharp cress that were travelled with them. The contrast between the thinly sliced pink flesh of the salmon and the green bright herb was a delight to the eye. Velvet D. Moscow Gordon was born shortly after midnight on the first day of May. It had been the custom of her family since her childhood begin the celebrating of her birth on the evening before, the festivities culminating with the gift-giving after the midnight hour. It was somehow seemed a more festive occasion than usual this year, although none of the guests could say why. Skye looked about her and smiled, satisfied. The sweets had been brought, including a caramel creme brulee, which was Velvet's favorite dessert. Her family was well fed and happy, trading confidences and gossip. Soon it would be midnight, and Velvet would sit in the place of honor at the high board and receive her gifts. Skye had already announced that the gift she and Adam planned to give their daughter would be the last gift. "'Tis midnight," Adam finally announced as the hall clock began to strike. He stood up, raising his goblet. "Happy birthday, Velvet. May this birthday be the best one you've ever had, and may you remember it always." So they give her all their gifts. And then Skye and now, Mama, what is the surprise that you and Papa have for me? Skye and Adam chuckled simultaneously, and then Lady DeMarco signaled to her servants, giving her husband a very arch look as she did so. Her daughter Willow thought. The doors to the great hall opened, and several footmen guided into a square platform that had been set on wheels. Above the base of the contraption was a railing from which the brass rings holding a blue velvet curtain hung. The curtain enclosed and hid from view the mysterious contents of the platform. Well, Mamma, this is most curious, Willow declared. What on earth was the curtain hiding? Her mother had certainly never given her anything like this gift, and why choose her youngest sibling's 33rd birthday? What was so special? The audience oohed. Velvet stared hard. There was something familiar about these people. She had seen them before. She knew them. Adali, Rana, Tumala. The names came suddenly into her head. Her heart began to pound violently. She gripped the edge of the table, white-knuckled. She looked again, this time directly at the beautiful girl. Incredible and very unusual turquoise blue eyes stared calmly back at her. There was something in their expression that tugged at her memory, but she could not place it. She carefully searched the girl's face for something familiar, something she could recognize and identify. The room was deathly silent, the frank curiosity of the other guests hanging heavily in the air. It was then that Velvet saw the small beauty mark on the girl's face, a tiny mole just below her left nostril and just above her upper lip. No, it could not be. It simply could not be. She gasped with shock as memories began to flood her very being. It was then the girl smiled tremendously and said, Happy birthday, Mama. With a shriek of dismay, Velvet DeMarco fainted, and the family just goes off on hysterics. Everybody exclaims, big, huge excitement. What? The Earl of Brockhorn demanded, his face darkening with outrage. What is this that your mother has said? This girl is your child? How, madame, can that be? And just when did you cockhold me, Velvet? Now, remember that in the previous book, while Velvet was off in India, her husband, she thought he was dead. She was 100% under the impression that he was dead. But he knew that she still lived. And yet he took a mistress and he kept the mistress with him for a considerable length of time, and she birthed his daughter. And he had his daughter declared, his illegitimate daughter declared legitimate and made one of his heirs. And she is right now an extremely spoiled, rotten child and goes ballistic when she sees Velvet. And there are quite a few chapters with her, SYBIL is the girl's name, going off on Jasmine for everything. But the thing is, they're both exactly the same. And what I mean by that is while the Earl of Brockhane messed around with his mistress, and his mistress had his daughter, Velvet also had a daughter with another man. So they both did the exact same thing. So he should not be pointing fingers at her. And then Skye had specifically told her daughter, tell him 16 years ago. And she never told him. So he explodes. What? The Earl of Brockhane demanded, his face darkening with outrage. What is this, madam, that your mother has said this girl is your child? What, madam, can that be? And just when did you cockhold me, Velvet? He looked angrier than any of his relations could ever remember having seen him. Tell him, Velvet, Skye said impeccably. Tell him that this instant, or I shall tell him. I'm astounded by your behavior and can imagine that Jasmine must think of you. Tell him. Aye, madam, tell me. Velvet looked nervously from her mother to her husband, to Jasmine, then back to Alex. What was the use? The cat was certainly out of the bag now. There was no help for it. Jasmine is my daughter, she told Alex Gordon. Her father is the Grand Mughal Akbar. How can this be? He demanded furiously. Suddenly Velvet was very angry herself. The memory of being forcibly separated from her daughter rose up, threatening to overwhelm her. All those years and so much between them lost. Standing up, Velvet said to her husband, "She was begat in the usual manner, my lord, when I was forced to leave her behind in India when I was sent home to you 15 years ago. I never believed I would see my daughter again, Alex, but this is she, I have no doubt. She carries her father's mark between her left nostril and her upper lip." She turned away from him and, opening her arms, "Come to me, Yasmin Kama Begum. You are the best birthday gift I have ever received. I am long to embrace you as I've never been able to do." Tears of happiness slipped down her face. "Oh, Mama, oh, Mama." So, let's just, SYBIL is going off all the time. She's given her grief. They tell the family the whole story. So then, Charlie, one of the kids, tries to make peace, and he says, let's see, Sibby was 16 on February the 1st. She's practically an old maid at this point. Most girls are married by 16, but Mama did not want her forced to prearranged marriage. She wants Sibby to find love. Sibby thinks she has found it in Lord Leslie. Lord Leslie is going to end up becoming an extremely part of this book. He's been in a few books. He's been a recurring character in quite a few of the books. He is, let me see the top. James Leslie, Earl of Glenkirk, the King's Confidant. So he's going to be a very important character. And also, these were friends of Robin Southward's, and they were all in the previous books. Thomas Ashbourne, Earl of Kent, he's also a friend of the family. I believe he's the one that went with them to India. I don't remember. But so Thomas Ashbourne, the Earl of Kent, Rowan Lindley, Marquis of Wesley, his cousin, and then James Leslie, Earl of Glenkirk, the King's Confidant. And then the King, Elizabeth Tudor, has passed, and it's King James Stuart, the King of England, and Annie Denmark, his queen. And so Charlie is telling her about the family. So Sibby is convinced that she wants to marry Leslie, and she goes ballistic at Jasmine several times in the book. Goes very spoiled, rotten child. They do eventually come to an understanding at one point, but she really says an awful lot of horrible things to Jasmine during their younger years. So Charles is trying to fill her in on the family. He says, "What about your brothers?" Jasmine asked. Let's see, Sandy turned 13 last month. Is Sandy his real name? It's James Francis Henry Alexander is his full name, Charlie replied. James for the king, but there are so many James in Scotland that he was not called by his first name. Francis was for the king's cousin, the Earl of Bothwell, who was my parents' friend. The king doesn't like his cousin, so my brother could not be called Francis. Henry was for the crown prince. One of the twins has that for a first name. So my brother called Sandy, which is a shortened version of Alexander, his last given name. That way he is not confused with Papa, who is called Alex. And she tells him her past too. And trying to get to the history. What's this last bit? For a moment he did not quite comprehend her, and then his light of understanding filled his eyes. You are my half-sister, he answered. You are our mother's daughter by a previous and legitimate alliance to the Grand Mughal of India. You truly believe that? Jasmine asked. If I did not believe it, Jasmine, then I should shame our mother's good name. I'll not do that. Your father is outraged by the revelation of my birth. What of his good name, Sandy? Do you not owe him loyalty too? You are clever like grandmother, he told her. My father is outraged, but he loves mother. It will take time, but he will eventually come to terms with all of this. In sending me here to England, my father was protecting me. I understand. I will try to be kinder to Sybil, but she must simply stop provoking me, and she doesn't. She provokes her forever. So then some people come for the festivities later on, and the Marquis of Wesley comes, and the king comes to visit, and Leslie comes to visit, and Sybil goes ballistic again, and she's telling everybody stories, and Skye just gets really pissed off at her, and she's telling the king all these stories, and it's treasonous to lie to the king. So where is it now? She tells she explains to the king that she was lying. So we'll just skip that a little bit. Let's see. So they go to court, and the court was back at Whitehall for the winter season, and a group of young English nobles clustered about, observing every one of the evening's entertainment with a sharp eye. You seem to be the best informed of us all, Henley, the Dark Lord North said. Tell us, who is the other new maid of honor? The daughter of a Scots earl, came the reply. God's nightshirt, exploded Lord North. Is it not bad enough that we are overrun by young impoverished second sons out of Scotland seeking to marry our ladies? Eager, uncouth fellows pushing us from our own court, now they are sending their women? Do not despair, Baron Henley told him. This girl has an English mother, and frankly, my dear North, she is divine. Petite skin like cream, golden curls, and eyes so blue a man could drown in them. She is absolutely adorable. The Earl of Kemp is already making a fool of himself over her. She is the Earl of Brockhorn's only daughter, and the man absolutely dotes upon her. She will have a fat dowry, you can be certain of it. Not only that, Baron Henley lowered his voice, I am told she is the granddaughter of Countess of Lundy. And do you know who the Countess of Lundy is? Because she asked who the Countess of Lundy is. God's foot North, you really know nothing. The Countess of Lundy is the magnificent Skye O'Malley herself. She was old Bess's great rival and banned from court after her marriage to Lord de Marscough, the Earl of Lundy. They say that she was the most beautiful woman in all the kingdom. Few except her have been seen her in years, if indeed she is still alive. She is rich beyond all knowing, I'm told. Why, you've met her, several of her children here at court. The Earl of Southwood is her son, and so is Lord Burke of Clearfield. The Countess of Icechester is her daughter. They say the mere mention of her name would infuriate Bess. Why? Baron Henley looked confused. I have absolutely no idea, North. It's just could, I'm told. Point out the little Scots girl to me, and then he points him out, and they talk about it. They talk about Jasmine too. Tom Ashburn is there. Startled, Baron Henley turned himself face to face with the Marquis of Wesley and his cousin, the Earl of Kemp. I believe Tom Ashburn said that my cousin is warning you off. He staked his claim to Mistress de Marscough some 6 months ago when they met. And North, my dear fellow, the dainty Sybil Gordon, for her name is mine. You will do to remember, at least I be forced to remind you. So she goes to court, and while the Earl of Kemp is totally in love with Sybil, Sybil is in love with James Leslie, the Earl of Glenkirk, and Sybil is forever trying to make trouble. She's going off all the time. She's downplaying Jasmine all the time. She's so jealous, but they're exactly equal. Her father had the affair with Elena, the mistress, and Velvet had the kid with Akbar. So they're both half siblings. They're both in the exact same situation, but SYBIL is massively, massively jealous. So then, if you read this previous books or spent some time with me with the previous books, the Earl of Southwood, Robin, or it's Robert, but everybody calls him Robin, has been holding 12th night parties for a very long time, and Elizabeth Tudor used to enjoy them. And so they arrive, and they're having this big party, and we are the Winter King and his queen, Robin announced. What do you think, Mama? Would my father have approved? Most certainly he would have, Skye told her son, remembering Geoffrey Southwood, Robin's father, the Angel Earl, they had called him, and he had been Elizabeth Tudor's favorite courier. He was an elegant golden creature of wit and style with whom she had shared a great passion. 45 years ago, this 12th night, she had come to Lymouth House for the first of many 12th nights for teas. She had been carrying the very son who now hosted the gala. She had been too proud to tell his father, but Geoffrey had learned of it and finally convinced her of his love that they might marry. 12th night. It had always been such a magic night for her family ever since. Skye felt Adam squeeze her hand, and Skye smiled into his face. I cannot help but remember, she said. I don't want you ever to forget, her husband answered. You loved him once, and Robin is proof of that. Even as Velvet is proof of the love we share, little girl. I am far more fortunate than Geoffrey Southwood or any of your other lovers for that matter. It is I who has been the lucky man to be your husband for all these years. He's our longest husband, over 30 years. So as I've said before, SYBIL is determined that she is going to marry the Earl of Glenkirk and she will have no other. And so Khan uses the time there to talk with the Earl of Glenkirk about marriage, and the Glenkirk says, nope, nada, zip zero. And so he goes from the one having the discussion with the father, and he ends up in bed with Jasmine. Now, Jasmine is a widow, so she gets a little bit of a pass there. But SYBIL goes ballistic. She finally has to accept the situation. Alex Gordon knelt beside his daughter's chair. Will nae have ye, Sibby, he began. We spoke last night, and I did not want to tell you until this morning. You were having such a good time at your uncle's feet. He'll not have me, SYBIL said. Why not? What? He said because he doesn't like blondes. That was his answer. So then they find them, the Earl of Glenkirk and Jasmine in bed, and Jasmine says he will not marry the Earl of Glenkirk. She just won't do it. And they let her get away with it. So then they decide that the SYBIL Gordon now stood before her father in the library of Greenwood. Her parents and her mother were also present as her hated rival. If they had expected her to be chastened by all that transpired earlier, they were mistaken. I want the truth, SYBIL, Alex Gordon said in a hard voice that SYBIL had never heard him use before. What truth, Papa? Why did you go to Lord Leslie's room early this morning? You certainly have no business there. Her father was correct. No virgin of a good family and breeding would go to a man's bedroom. Well, Sibby, have ye no answer for me? So that's embarrassing. So they asked her why she went to his room, and she said, "I did not go to play the wanton." She lied. She lied. She was going to try and trap him. "I simply wanted to say good night to Lord Leslie. You said you would speak with him, and I believed a match had been made between us." The truth was that she had indeed gone to compromise James Leslie in hopes of marriage, but it didn't work. Um, so so then Alex decides that Sybil's going to marry the Earl of Kemp, Thomas Ashbourne. That Sybil's going to marry him, and they end up having a pretty good marriage. So then Rowan Lindsay Wesley is going to marry Jasmine. She agrees to marry him because she does not want to marry Glenkirk. So Lady Sybil Alexander Mary Gordon was married to Lord Thomas Henry Kemp on the very sunny morning of January 26, 1607. The bride wore a gown of white velvet with cloth of silver underskirt and a bodice sewn all over with pearls and crystals that sparkled in the sunlight. Their marriage was celebrated in the chapel at Lymouth House, and the feast held afterwards was attended by the king and queen. Now he and Sybil stood receiving the congratulations of the guests. The Earl of Kemp smiled widened at the sight of the Burkes. "How did you know?" he exclaimed. "Robin sent a message, Patrick, and I wouldn't have missed seeing you wed for the world. Now you can no longer flirt with my wife, you rogue. My dear niece Sybil will certainly destroy you if you do. I have no doubt. Mamma says you besotted by the wench." "Stop teasing Tom," Felicina interjected, and kissed the Earl's cheek. "I told you you would one day find the perfect woman for you, my dear friend. How glad I am I might be here to see you married." But she said, "Sybil?" The Marquis of Wessex promenaded through the ballroom of Lymouth House with his betrothed's wife displayed on his arm. Jasmine looked most significant in an orange velvet gown with a brocade underskirt. "Look how proudly she holds herself," Skye said. "She should be queen. She is you all over again, for the turquoise eyes and the damel-fetching moles," Adam Damasco said. "Nah, you are the most beautiful woman who ever lived. Don't argue with me, little girl." And Adam has always called Skye little girl. So she's married to Rowan. Sybil is married to Thomas. The brides, they have to tell James Leslie. Let's just go through this real quick because it's an important issue. James Leslie, however, was not even bemoaning the lack of foresight. Several days after he and Jasmine had been found in bed, he called upon the Earl and Countess of Lundy, asking their permission to court their daughter. And they said, "Oh, she's already betrothed." Sorry, too late. "Listen to me, my lord," Skye said. "Rowan Lindy met our daughter last May. He fell in love with her and sought our permission to marry. We refused him because we felt Jasmine needed more time to acclimate herself to a new life in London. We were also thinking of ourselves and how much we enjoyed having this grandchild we never expected to know with us." And they tell her she agreed to the match, and they've set off. So then they spend some time at Queen's Malvern and in London. So then they need to go to her husband. Rowan buys. They're auctioning off land. I don't think I wrote this part down, but for Jasmine's birthday, or as I think maybe a wedding present or birthday present. The Scotland was the guy Ireland. The king was giving out land, kicking all the original residents off and giving out land. So he gives her this deed to Maguire's Ford. So they go to Ireland, to Maguire's Ford, and they run into a whole string of trouble over there with the people, because these people, this is their home, this is their land, and they're being kicked off by the king and given out to English people, and they're totally pissed off about it. So they go to Maguire's Ford, and they have two people they interact with mostly. Rory Maguire, and he's was former Lord of Maguire's Ford, and he's the one that his family lost the land. He wasn't the oldest, but his family lost the land. Fergus Duffy, Bride Duffy, and Eamon Feeney, the land agent, and he has huge issues with the king giving out all the land. Huge issues. And they have lots of issues with him, and trying to the castle will be open, I assume, Rowan Lindley said. Aye, my lord, it will be. Then go along, Maguire. The Marquis instructed him. Just a second. Okay. So, the castle will be open, I assume, Rowan Lindley said. Aye, my lord, it will be, was the reply. I didn't know you were recording. You're gonna have to redo that. No. Then go along, Maguire, the Marquis instructed him. Rory Maguire untied one of the mares from behind the coach, and without even bothering to saddle, the creature swung himself upon its back and rode out of the castle courtyard, guiding the animal with his knees, a hand gripping the mare's mane. You're mad to trust that one, Feeney said. I'll murder you in your beds before 'tis all done. I'm certain. Where did you find him, Feeney? The Marquis asked, curious. Rory was no servant, or farmer for that matter. Rowan Lindley knew he was too well spoken, and his hands, although hard, were not a workman's hands. Feeney, of course, would not have realized any of that. He had not the wit. He was just here, my lord, when I arrived to take possession of Maguire's Ford in the king's name. Come, Master Feeney, we'll get the horses settled. So they get the horses settled, and they discover that Maguire's Ford, Maguire is Maguire of Maguire's Ford. And they decide they'll get a priest, they'll have a priest come. And so then Father Cullen, remember he was in India with Jasmine. Rory Maguire returned to Ernie Rock in the twilight. Behind him, lights were already twinkling in the cottages, and smoke rose from their stone chimneys. Beside him walked an enormous grey dog, who was obviously familiar with the territory, as was his tall frame master. Rory Maguire nodded, and climbing the flight of steps that led into the castle itself, headed for the great hall. There he found the Marquess and Marchioness of Wesley seated at the high board eating their supper. Their servants stood attentively, watching of their new owner's every need. The dog, moving away from the master, stretched his great length before one of the two fireplaces, and with a sigh closed his eyes in utter and rapt contentment. Come and join us, Rowan Lindley said, though it seems strange to ask a man to sit at his own table, Maguire. This place belongs to Connor Maguire, my lord, and he was his kinsman, and he tells the story. But then I seem to have missed. She goes again. She's always. Summer passed while the mares that Lindley had brought to Ireland grew fat on the lush grass growing on the plantation, and 4 of the 6 swelled with new life. Fergus Duffy was dispatched to the Bishop of Maconet and returned several weeks later with Colin Butler in tow. Jasmine hugged her cousin warmly. Grandmother said that great-uncle Michael would not let you leave him, but I did not return you to Ireland so that you have your little stone church, Cousin McCollin. Now do you? The people of Maguire's Ford have been eagerly awaiting you. There are over a dozen babies to be baptized and at least 2 unions to be properly blessed. Cousin Colin, this is Roy McGregor, the estate manager. My cousin Colin Bella is the priest I told you about. And he was her tutor in India, and he gets to know everybody there. And due to Feeney's hatred of them and his thinking that they don't belong here, that the land belongs to the Maguires, he attempts to shoot Jasmine and misses and kills her husband. So her husband is now deceased. She leaves town, mentally has an issue. They solve it with another secret that will be revealed in a later book. A huge spoiler here. They have Rory Maguire take care of her needs, and she heals, and she also ends up with child, and she does not know and does not remember Rory at all. She was in her headspace. So then Evelyn, Skye's sister, she's the nun. She has been on all the books. She has always delivered all the children, and she brings sad tidings. She delivers the child. Her and Evelyn fight over, and it ends up being a girl. They bet and she loses. But then Evelyn tells her some sad news. Evelyn patted her sister's hand comfortably. Do not grieve for me, Skye. Let me back up here. Be careful, her younger sister cautioned her just before her departure. The English have an iron grip on Ireland now, and it's just not likely they'll let go. I thank God St. Bride's is off the beaten path. What happened in England to the monasteries and the convents all those years ago could just as easily happen in Ireland. Religious houses have burned before. King James is a nice enough fellow, and given the choice, he would allow full freedom of religion. I will be dead before there is any change, and I praise God for the uneasy deliverance. She tells Skye that she has cancer. And I will live a year or two at the most. Evelyn, Skye, horrified by her sister's blunt words. Evelyn, however, smiled serenely. You and I, of all our sisters, have lived our lives as we choose to live them, Skye. We let no man tell us what we might do or not do. I am one of 3 women physicians in Ireland today. My life has been filled aiding the ill, bringing new souls into this world, and easing the burden for the dying. Seeing my skills heal the sick, life has been a joy for me, and I praise God with every bit of my being that He allowed me such total happiness and complete fulfillment. Now I am dying. I have the right to complain over it. I am 74 years old, sister. It is venerable age. Why, neither our sisters nor Peg or Bride lived to such an age. Evelyn patted her sister's hand comfortably. Do not grieve for me, Skye. When God wills my time at end, I will go serving Him with obedience as I have ever tried to serve Him. Mourn me a little with your heart, Skye, for I know you will do it even if I forbid you. Watching her sister ride off down the road upon her small birdman's cart, Skye knew that she would never see her sister again. How can Evelyn be dying? How can I be facing my 70th birthday and God's nightshirt? Adam will be 80 next month. I am beginning to have an aversion to Mary as old Beth Tudor did. Admittedly, I look better for my age than I should, but already I'm beginning to feel the hot breath of old age in my aches and pains. Godspeed, Upland O'Malley. So, they pack up and they go back to England, and they've got to go to court. They decide Jasmine needs to go to court for a while to experience court life, and she gets Henry Stuart, the king's son, falls in love with Jasmine and takes her to bed. She becomes his mistress, and she's not of high enough rank. She's not a queen or a royalty of some country, and they have to marry royalty of another country because if he married her, she would be queen one day. So he's unable to marry her, although he wants to. He's in love with her, and she ends up giving birth to his son. And he gets really sick and ends up dying after the birth of the child, and the child is declared, that he is who he is. And then the Earl of Glenkirk comes back into the story, that he has been in love with her for a very long time. The Earl of Glenkirk had returned to court after an absence of some months. He had been in Scotland overseeing his vast holdings, it becoming increasingly difficult, he found, to serve both James Stuart and his own interests. Glenkirk was his home, and he loved it, but without Isabel and the children it was a place overrun with lonely memories, not just of his late wife and children, but of his mother, his father, his grandparents, and the magnificent matriarch he had never known, but who was still spoken of by the Leslies of Glenkirk, Janet Leslie. She is the Caden. If you want to read that book, Kadin. She spent a lot more time in the harems than Skye did, but she did spend a whole lot of time over there. So he's at court, and he finds out that I toyed with Henry Stuart, my dear lovely boys, a boy nonetheless. My husband is always boring. As for the prince, he has taken Dowager Marchioness of Wesley to his bed. I must say that she is every bit as beautiful as I am, Francis concluded generously. She is half foreign, I'm told, born a princess in her own native land. Her mother is the Countess Brockcurrant. She and the prince are mad for one another, my dear. One cannot help but wonder how long it will last, but it is encouraging to know that Henry Stuart does not have his father's proclivity. The Dowager Marchioness of Wesley, Francis? I did not know there was one. Surely she must be a bit old for the prince. I met the young Marchioness of Wesley, but not her mother-in-law. The Glenkirk replied, is the young Lady Lindy, who is foreign-born. My goodness, where have you been? You have been gone a long time, Francis said. The Marquis of Wesley was killed in Ireland. And he's like, oh, she's single again. I can get her again. And it's just not good for the situation. And she doesn't want him to be there. He's trying to court her again. And the 12th, they have the 12th party again. And they end up at Queen's Malvern, and Glenkirk has decided that he will have Jasmine and no other. And the end of the book, gone. I do not understand you, ma'am. Where do you mean gone? Skye O'Malley de Moscow looked at the Earl of Glenkirk and thought he was certainly an extraordinarily handsome man, with his midnight black hair and his gold green eyes. It was obvious that he had stopped somewhere nearby to change from his traveling clothes into a more elegant black velvet suit. Uh, um, where is Jasmine? James Leslie demanded once again. She is gone, my lord, I have told you. Gone where? I do not know. God's boots, anger darkened the Earl's handsome face. Seated in a large, comfortable chair, Lord de Moscow felt a pang of sympathy for James Leslie. Adam certainly knew how aggravating the woman and his family could be when they chose to be, and at this moment Jasmine had chosen to be particularly difficult. Slowly sipping Archibald wine, Adams remained silent for the moment, allowing his wife to handle the situation. Where is Lord Stewart, the Earl of Glenkirk? The child is legally in my charge. They made him the godfather. Viscount Lundy is with his mother. You would hardly expect my daughter to go traveling with her child, my lord. And she's deliberately made a beds, and this is treason. Your granddaughter promised in marriage to me by the king, has gone traveling, but you do not wear. She has removed the king's grandson from the palace and taken the lad, my legal charge, with her. And you believe that my outrage is overreaction, madame? So, if you want to find out what happened, you're going to have to join me for book 7, Darling Jasmine. And also, I fear the end of Skye O'Malley, and we'll all break our tissues. And then we do continue with the grandchildren. We do go to book 12 through the grandchildren. But I hope you will enjoyed reading this with me. And I could have read the entire book, but I probably read most of it. But I hope you will join me for Darling Jasmine in a couple of days. And please hit the like and subscribe, and I apologize for my husband's interference in my video and my cat throwing up in my video. Like I said, there's no special effects here. I'm not talented in editing, and I got a carpet to go clean up too. So please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job. Thank you.